you're seeing all these different things, and you got to be able to walk that out with a kid.
Well, if you're trying to coach a kid that's come from an abusive home and you just yelling at him, that's all he's seeing is the same thing that I'm seeing. This thing I hate at home, I'm seeing from my coach.
Yeah.
You forget it. He's got to be treated in a different way.
That's right.
Now, you take other kids that come from they might be a little hard-headed, and their parents might tell you, hey, you got to get on him if he's going to listen. That's the only way he's going to listen. You got to get to know your players.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to the Game Changers League podcast, where we're cultivating culture and shaping the future of sports with our conversations. Today's a very special day for me. I've got my stepdad here, Coach Cloy Ford, from South Carolina, in the studio with me. My daughter's graduated from high school this week, and he happened to be out here in Oklahoma with me to celebrate her in her graduation. And I could not pass up this opportunity to get him in the studio and have a chance to have a conversation with him about his coaching career, spanning over 37 years in the state of South Carolina in high school football. And just had some incredible experiences, won some state championships, coached some great athletes, some that have gone on to do big things in college, and several to go on to the NFL. And so just excited to have him with us here today. And a man that's made a great impact in our family. And my kids know him as Poppy, and I love him so much. And so wanted to give him an opportunity to come in with me and share today. So Coach Ford, talk to me a little bit about like your coaching experience. I know you've been coaching for 37 years. You won the state championships. Coach players that have gone on to do big things, and still have a relationship with some of those guys today. How did you get started in this? What got you thinking like, hey, I want to be a high school football coach?
Well, you probably remember being in your mom's wedding.
Yeah.
Who was the best man was actually my high school football coach.
Yeah.
Growing up, I didn't really have a male figure in my life except him, and he basically was the father I didn't have. And I can remember having conversations with him in high school. He was getting on me if I did something wrong, correcting me, teaching me how to be a man. And he asked me one day, so what do you think you want to do? I said, I think I want to do what you do. Yeah. He said, I think that would be a good path for you to go. He said, and as soon as he said, go to college. He led me how to enroll in college, do all that. I ended up coaching him, hiring me my second year of coaching on his staff. And he got me, and I coached with him from 1989 to 1999 till he got out of it. I actually ended up coaching with him at another school for a year at Carver's Bay.
Okay.
But he set the example and led me to get into coaching.
Yeah.
And been doing it 37 years now.
That was Coach Manus.
Coach Manus, Dave Manus, yeah. He passed away about 3 years ago. It was Paul Bear's funeral. Him and his family all meant a lot to me. He basically raised me. He was the dad I never had. So that's what led me to get into coaching.
Yeah.
Because it's what he taught me and what I knew and what I saw from him.
That's awesome. We hear so many stories about that. I know being a coach myself, so many of the guys that I still have relationship with today are the guys that did not have active fathers in their life. Mm-hmm. And that coaching relationship with a player, really, there's something about that to where whenever you build a relationship with a young man, you do become like a father figure. Yeah. And so that's what he was to you and helped you to get into coaching. Right.
Well, and it's more prominent today. Kids today, when you coach them, probably more so than 20 years ago, you got to earn the right to be able to get on them.
Yeah.
You can't just get, if all they hear from you is you messed up here, you messed up here, you messed up here, after a while, they're going to turn a deaf ear to it.
Yeah.
If they know you care about them,
if
you've earned that right, you can have free reign on discipline. Because deep inside, the kids want you to discipline. They want a man. I've learned the young men, they want a grown man to discipline them and teach them right. They act like they don't like it sometimes, but deep down inside, they do.
Yeah.
And that's where they come back a little bit later and tell you how much they appreciate it and everything. But once they know you care, that's when you can really start developing. They got to know you care.
Yeah.
You've got to do things and show them, I'm not here to just want you to be a good football player. I want you to be a good man.
Right. Yeah. And we talk about that a lot here on the podcast, character coaching. is a part of that whole aspect of being a coach. Helping young men, young women develop the character traits that they need to have to go on and be successful in life. And so I appreciate you saying that, because that's the common theme that we find in all great coaches, is that they care about their players. I used to hear one of the statements that really shaped my coaching philosophy is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
And so whenever you're trying to teach and you're trying to develop, if you don't have the relationship pre-existing, building that relationship outside of the court, outside of the field, then you're not going to get their attention. So that I appreciate you saying that. That's really important. And so you've been coaching for 37 years. Coached, I know Coach Manus was at Ainer High School. Is that
Ainer High School, and from there I coached a year at Conway High School.
Yeah, under Coach Chuck
Jordan. Yeah, learned a lot from him. Yeah. He's a good man, good coach. He's big in Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Now, matter of fact, he's doing some of the Friday night broadcasts, and one of our games this year was on TV.
That's
and I
right.
talked to him when we played Hannah-Pamplico.
Yeah.
And I spoke to him there before the game. And then from there, I went to Latta, which a guy who Coach Manus had coached too, that I played with in high school, was the head coach, Doug Henson.
Yep.
And I went there and I stayed at Latta a while. And then I went to Carver's Bay. Coach Manus was over there.
Yeah.
So I went over there, and he ended up only staying a year, and I stayed there. And then from there is where I've been at Lakeview for 15 years now.
Yeah. And Lakeview, for those of you who don't know, Lakeview High School has more wins than any playoff wins than any high school in the state of South Carolina. It is the most dominant playoff team that we have in the history of the state. And multiple state championships throughout those stretch of years, and you got to be a part of that back in 2016.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about that team.
Well, the 2016 team was it weren't just talent. It was there's a story that goes back. In 2015, we were playing in the lower state championship, and we had the ball with about a minute and a half to go. Long story short, we got a very bad call and ended up losing the game on a field goal at the end. And you could just see it on them on the way back. And we only had 3 seniors on that team, so they were all coming back. And I can remember coming back to school the next Monday. I got there about 6:30 in the morning, and I heard some noise in the weight room. So I looked in there, and that very next Monday, those kids, some bunch of them had got in the weight room, wanted to get ready for next year. They were on a mission. I've never seen a team driven like that. And they're talented. There's not a position where we weren't talented. But along with that, you had quality young men. You had leaders on the team, to the standpoint where we just basically had to prepare them, because like if there was a player that was getting distracted or getting out of line, they were going to take care of it in the locker room.
Yeah.
We found that out later.
We were talking about that.
Now, how we didn't ask no question, but they just, if we had a couple that might get out of line or be a distraction, and one of our linebackers, we called him Rock Tellers, he said, we took care of all that in the locker room.
Yeah,
y'all didn't have to worry about that. Right. We took, that's leaders. Being leadership.
Player-led teams.
Right. Yeah. They were the whole team was like leaders, because they were all on the same mission. I mean, this was a team that when we walked on the practice field, they were lined up waiting on us.
Yeah.
And they were so driven that we literally limited how many practices we had in pads, because we were scared they were going to hurt each other.
Well, I can speak to some of that.
Physical. They were so physical.
I got to be with y'all during that playoff run that year and see y'all's run to the state championship. And I remember, I think it was C.E. Murray, y'all were playing them, and literally in the game, one of the officials walks over to you guys and says, "Hey, could you tell your guys to stop hitting so hard?"
Well, he didn't really know what to say, because that's when they were doing that. We just knocked the quarterback out.
Yeah.
And he was there. I think he went on to play at Carolina.
Yeah.
But we had hit him, and long story short, he was sliding, so that's what caused some of the helmet. So they didn't call anything, and their coaches all upset, and they stopped the game for a while, because I think they had to take him off the field.
Yeah, they brought the ambulance on.
And he was complaining, and he came over there, and he said, I don't know what really to tell y'all about what happened. He said, can you tell them not to hit quite so hard? And we said, no, that's how we play.
Yeah.
we tell them not to hit anything illegal, but that's part of who they are.
It wasn't a cheap shot.
No, it was no cheap shot.
It was a bang bang play.
They looked for clean shots.
And they would light you up. I mean, that was
their mentality.
Yeah.
And now you're talking about a bunch of the same group that you might go to the locker room and they're in a group praying.
Yeah.
But they were on a mission.
Yeah.
And they would, we would do our team prayer, and then a lot of times you'd see them huddled together doing their own prayer.
Yeah.
Again, that's leadership.
Yeah.
And that's, the quality of the young men we have.
Yeah. Some of those guys like Junior, who took a
quarterback,
big role
Junior,
in that.
lives in Arizona. I called him not long ago. He's doing well.
Yeah.
He's the one I asked. I said, "Do you live near Tombstone?" And he said, "Well, Tucson's." But I said, "No, Junior, not Tucson. Tombstone, where they had to fight OK Corral." Yeah. He said, "Coach Ford, I don't have a clue where you're talking about." But no, he was our well. This is the kind of quality these young men were. Junior, who was our quarterback, just an outstanding young man, got hurt during a game, and it was the only game we ended up being behind in that year because we went undefeated. And so we had to switch quarterbacks and switch offenses because the quarterback we had, we switched to Wishbone that game. Yeah. And we got out of the shotgun where we had been in a lot, and we went to the Wishbone, and we ended up, I got an offensive line together. I said, we just got to run the ball and win this. And they said, well, that's what we got to do. We'll do it. Yeah. And we ended up winning a close game to them. But that was the only game we trailed that whole year. Yeah. They came back and won. And that was against Hemingway, who we later beat for the lower state championship to get to the state championship.
That's right. That's right. Where you played Lamar. Lamar was considered to be the favorite going into that game, and it wasn't even close.
They were on I forgot how long a game winning streak.
It went to the previous year because they were undefeated coming in. Y'all were undefeated coming in.
Right. And I think they had also had a winning streak from the year before going. They had a long game winning streak. They hadn't lost in a while. But our crowd just, they were just so physical, and Lamar was quite used to that. Yeah. And it was just a crowd, they were on a mission. They were just all together. Everybody was on the same page. You had no division. It was like, everybody was all in. Everybody, anytime, they said, okay, this week we're doing this, they bought into it. They, they film studied. They were like your dream team. I remember after that game, going home and telling your mom that, and I said, you know what? I said, whatever happens here after this, I'm content. Yeah. Just to coach a group of young men like that. I said, and that's what makes it so good. Not only did you go undefeated and win the state, but you were around a bunch of quality young men who were just, which is typical really of the young men we have at Lakeview. Yeah. They're very, very disciplined. That's one of the first things that's established there is discipline, the way you act. Lakeview is a very traditional place. A lot of those guys that play out there, their dads played out there. Right. Their parents went to school there, and it's very, very traditional.
Small town,
tight-knit
the whole community gets
yeah.
behind.
Yeah.
I mean, Friday nights is the most important thing going on in that town.
Right. And the whole town, everybody's on the same page of what they want. Yeah. It's a tight-knit community.
It kind of reminds me of everybody talks about like Texas high school football. It's that's the identity of every small town across the state of Texas. Well, Lakeview's kind of a school like what you would find in those Texas towns in the state of South Carolina, because everybody gets around it. I remember whenever I was in school there, basketball wasn't that big a priority, and I was talking to somebody the other day about, and I'm talking about it a little bit on our podcast, how I can remember the basketball goals during that time. Now this was under previous coaching staff, the basketball goals would be raised during football season. You didn't touch a basketball during football season, and so football was the priority during football season. Right. And
our girls actually won a state championship 2 years ago.
That's right.
One of our football coaches, our defensive line coach, Larry Hammond, who played football at Lakeview, played football at Western Carolina. Yep. And he's the girls' basketball coach. They won the state championship 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Sure did.
And they were knocking on that door for a couple of years there.
He's been in the lower state for, 2-3 years straight, and we come close, and then he finally got that. And the coach, Larry Emmett, is a good, fine Christian man. Yeah. I mean, so we were really happy to see him get that.
That speaks to something we talk a lot about on the podcast is the culture of a program. Whenever you I've said this so many times, whenever you build a consistent culture with great leadership, and that starts at the head coach and works its way down, Brent Marley was talking about this on last week whenever we were interviewing him, how culture is it's installed at the top but instilled at the bottom. And so coach is responsible to install culture, but then it's the players' responsibility to carry that culture. And you had a group of girls there at Lakeview High School that carried that culture that Larry had set for them, and they were consistently competitive, for 2 to 3 years, and you just know eventually they're going to knock the door down to get that state championship, and they did it.
Well, it's like at Lakeview, you're not going to be in state championship every year. You're not going to win it every year, but you keep the culture no matter what your talent level is.
Right.
Okay. So that way your program stays the same.
Yeah,
there's going to be years, especially at a Class A school, sometimes you're not going to have the talent to make it all the way. You're going to get out talented at some point sometimes, but that doesn't mean that the state of your program has gone down. I've seen programs be very good for 2 years and then the bottom just drops out.
Yeah.
For, 5, 6, 7 years, at places like Lakeview, and even, neighboring Dillon, they keep a certain culture within the program. So even if the talent level's down, the players had the same expectations. You're going to come to practice, come to your workouts. You're going to act like somebody. You're going to, be a quality person. You're going to go by every tradition we have. And so even, I remember one year, trying to remember the year, I think we went 4-6 in the regular season, but we ended up getting in the playoffs and making it to the lower state championship with a 4-6 record, because you had players that, even though it had been a rough year, they were still playing hard.
Yeah.
Those expectations, what you expect from them, playing hard. So, you go in there, you get a first round win, next thing you know, you're in the lower state championship.
Yeah.
And so even with that, and then when you're able to do that, and, you keep that culture, even, and the talent level is going to go like this, but you keep the culture there all the time.
Yeah.
You keep high expectations from the kids. It doesn't matter if you're a second stringer or third stringer, you're going to have the same expectations as far as how you're going to act, what you're going to do, and, the way we're going to treat you.
Yeah.
It's like I tell everybody, I said, the depth chart's open every year.
That's
we
right.
start a new depth chart. I said, I've seen third stringers end up starting, because you just never can tell, how kids are going to come out and what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's what's important, is to keep state of your program. Understand it's not going to, be the best team you've had every year, but you still keep those same standards.
That's right.
Same culture. Keep that tradition.
Yeah. And I can tell you just from the time that I was there as a student before transferring to Loudoun and playing basketball there and graduating, that I've always had a great deal of respect for the Lakeview football program, because that consistent culture. It was there. It was under Joel McLaurin. It's there now. And so 30 plus years of high school.
They've had one thing too, and we talk about keeping a culture that we've had at Lakeview. I was counting it up and I forgot. In the past 45 years, there's been 3 head coaches.
Yeah.
There was, Joel McLaurin was an assistant.
Yeah.
And then he got it. Darrell King, who's our head coach now, played at Lakeview, played college at North Greenville, come back, coached at Lakeview as an assistant. When Coach McLaurin wanted to step down, Coach King became the head coach. So I know since 1970 to now, there's been 3 head coaches.
Yeah. And
so that's continuity.
Yeah.
Not a lot of change, because they don't have, there's some coaches that they specifically are going from school to school,
trying to get to a bigger school.
Well, or they know, okay, this team's going to be good next 2 years. I'm going to go there 2 years. I'm cutting out and I'm going somewhere else. And that's okay if that's what they want to do. I'd prefer to be somewhere and work on that culture and that tradition and that program, and always be a part of that program. Because I feel like whenever I retire from Lakeview, I'm going to be their biggest fan now. Because I'm still going to be a part of Lakeview.
Right.
I'm not going to be on the sidelines. Not going to be coaching. But I'm going to be in stands and still be a part of that. Coach McLaurin, who was there for years.
Still the same way.
Up there in the press box. Yeah. Because he still knows he's a part of it.
Yeah. 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 And I love that. I think that there's something to be said about that, the coaches that are willing to live through the hard years, to be able to enjoy and celebrate the good years and know that they were a part of building that. You know,
Right.
I couldn't, as a coach, I could never be the guy that like jumps around from place to place just trying to find who's got the most talent. You know, I don't want to be too critical of those guys, but there's part of me that feels like, hey, you know, you're not developing young men that way. You're just chasing wins. And not to say that they're running a, you know, shady program or anything like that, because that's not always the case. You know, you got some good guys that's just their philosophy of how to go about their business. But I love seeing whenever coaches are willing to go and invest in the lives of young men, young women, spend the time in the community. You know, that's to me, because athletics, especially at the high school level, is such a community-driven, experience. And so to have coaches that are willing to stay in the community, invest in that, and see those young people, you know, grow up and go on to do big things. I know that you've kind of taken that same approach throughout your coaching career. Ainer for 10 years, Latta for a number of years. I don't know how many years you were there, but
2001 to 2000, I think, was it 6 years at Latta?
Yeah,
no, it's 6 years at Carver's Bay, 4 years at Latta.
4 years at Latta, 6 years at Carver's Bay. Yeah. But it was all out of relationships that you had in the coaching industry.
Right, everyone. Guy I played with, guy that coached me.
Yeah.
And then Lakeview, actually, I had got to know the guys from Lakeview from coaching against them. Coach Mack. Well, Coach Mack, who's the head coach, and Coach Manus, my head coach, we're good friends from playing each other every year.
Ainer and Lakeview every year.
Yeah, had a lot of respect for each other. And they got to be good friends, so I get to know them through going that and here and there, and then ended up being there.
Yeah.
And it's the best job I've ever had.
Yeah. And you won a state championship at Carver's Bay. Had some talent on that team. Guys like Clifton Gathers, I think, was on that team, correct?
Yeah, Clifton. Yeah. Clifton ended up playing, I think he was drafted by the Browns. His brother, Junior, was before I got there. He had a big career with Cincinnati Bengals. Their dad got drafted, but I think he had some knee injuries, and he ended up playing for the Bills a year, and then some in the USFL. Now,
their uncle,
Jumpy, had a big career with the Redskins.
That's right.
I remember. He played in the Super Bowl against the Bills when they won.
Yeah.
And
I remember that as a kid.
And the funny thing is now Clayton Gathers, who is their cousin.
Yeah.
He went to Central Florida. My last year at Carver's Bay was Clayton's last year. Clayton went to Central Florida, ended up getting drafted by the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
Well, then Darius, who I was coaching, Darius was a sophomore when I got to Lakeview.
Yep.
And he goes to South Carolina State plays, and we're waiting at draft night to see who he's going to get drafted by, and he gets drafted by the Colts. And he ended up sending me a picture. Your mom may put it in a frame of Clayton and Darius tackling a guy together.
Oh.
So two guys I've coached.
Right there.
And because I texted Darius that night when I got drafted.
I said, totally forgot about Clayton. I remember Clifton.
Yeah.
And then I think I was kind of away for a while and didn't get to a lot of those games.
Clayton was their cousin.
Okay.
Yeah, and Clayton, his senior year was my last year at Carver's Bay. And then he went to play at Central Florida. Yeah. And he got drafted by the Colts. I think he was drafted in like the 4th round. And then, Darius went, played South Carolina State, and was drafted in the 2nd round. Yeah. And they both played on the same team, got to be good friends.
Yeah.
He said, they keep in touch from time to time.
That's good. Now, Darius came back this past year, passed up an opportunity to coach for the Philadelphia Eagles to come and work with you guys.
Darius, Darius, I don't know what the future holds for him. Yeah. He's, he battled some injuries and everything, but at one time, I think he was the best linebacker in the NFL.
He was the defensive rookie of the year his rookie season.
He came from that Lakeview culture, and he was so driven. I mean, as talented as he was, when he was in high school, he had it. He was in the weight room. He worked, and he worked some more. And he, as good a football player as he is, he's that good of a man.
Exactly.
The first thing he did when he got drafted was start giving back. Doing this for people, doing that. He does charities in Indianapolis. I think he's still involved in. Yeah. He's done so much, I can't even name them all.
I remember I tried to recruit him to come play basketball for me at Dillon Christian School whenever I was coaching there.
Yeah. So you messed his NBA career up because he probably could have played in that. But no, but he's just, like I said, he is as good a person to be around. And I was telling you, this is his mentality. he coached with us this past year because, his injuries had set him back a little bit, so he chose not to sign. What the future holds, we don't know, but he's a man of a lot of faith, and he kind of, God's going to lead it, and whatever happens, I'm going to be.
He's good with it.
He was great. He was a great coach, helped us so much this year, very good coach. And, he knows how things are done at Lakeview, and he really was such a good addition to our staff. But, I remember going to practice one day, and I just had a sack of balls on my shoulder, and he comes and grabs them off my shoulders and said, I'm carrying that. I said, I can carry balls there. He said, no. He said, I'm young. I got to pay my dues. He said, you paid your dues. But that shows you his character, and how he was and how he come up in that Lakeview mentality,
This is a guy that signed a $99 million contract.
Yeah.
Played football in the NFL, but he's going to carry a sack of footballs.
And he and his wife have built a house back in Lakeview. His wife's from Lakeview. They have 2 children. And they've got a son, a younger son. And he's a Christian family man. He's enjoying living in Lakeview. Yeah. What the future holds, I don't know. I just want him to be happy. I would hate to lose him as a coach. He's that big valuable, but I want him to be happy. Yeah. And if going back in the NFL and playing again, if that's God's will, I just want him happy because he is just such a good guy. Yeah. He's just the kind of guy you love just being around. He's smiling, happy. Yeah. Happy about everything.
He's invested a lot into the community, into the town.
Very, very much, very much. He does more for other people than he does for himself. I think. He's very unselfish.
Well, he had some guys to look up to whenever he was playing at Lakeview too. Probably as a young guy, you had some great linebackers come out of that program. You had Darius, of course. You had Quandon Christian, who played at Clemson. He may have had a stint in the NFL. I can't remember. I know he signed a free agent contract.
Is a scout now for the Green Bay Packers.
Okay, so that's right, because that's where he was at.
He came by the school one day when South Carolina was playing at Texas A&M because the Packers wanted him to scout some of the offensive linemen for Texas A&M. When they scout, they go down there in pregame and get a visual and look at them and give a report on them and things like that. So Quandon is scouting for the Green Bay Packers now. Larry Inman, who I was telling you about, was a very good linebacker in the early 80s. I think he almost signed with Tennessee. That didn't work out, but he signed in Western Carolina, had a good career at Western Carolina, got his education. He coached in North Carolina a lot. He's back in Lakeview. Him and his wife live in Lakeview, out in the country of Lakeview.
Yeah, Larry's a good man.
Yeah, he is a very good man. Good coach, does real well. He coached the defensive line. Anthony Waters.
That's what I was about to say, Anthony.
Darius's older brother. This is the kind of character they have. It's my understanding that, Anthony, he had the knee injury.
Yeah.
Probably would.
I remember I was in Louisiana watching that when it happened. I was in Louisiana watching the game on TV, and, man, my heart broke for him.
I've met Anthony from being out there, and Anthony's like Darius. They've had such a good raising by their mom. She taught them such good values. And Anthony is just a top quality man, and he my understanding is that when he went with the Chargers, if I'm remembering right, he was not even a starter, but he was voted a team captain because of the character, leadership quality, And that is the big thing about Darius, that what sold him in the NFL was his leadership ability. You look at the Colts, look at him on the field, or what a leader he became. Yeah.
Now, we talked about this in a previous podcast about the whole team captain thing, like how team captains are chosen. And you said that. You made the comment that, he was chosen basically as a team captain. At Lakeview, do y'all allow the team to kind of vote who the captains are, or do y'all as coaches give input to that or choose those captains? How do y'all do that there?
We don't really have what we say you. Now, when I was in high school, I remember being a team captain. We were 4 team captains. We don't do that now. We take turns who goes out for the coin toss and stuff like that. We don't have named team captains.
Gotcha.
Your leaders kind of end up displaying themselves.
Right.
And you just kind of let them, we don't say, hey, you're the leader, you're the leader, you're the leader. They kind of come out and show it themselves. For instance, when Darius played, I can remember him and several others just come out, and that's the team leaders.
Yeah.
In 2016, you just really knew who the team leaders were, because leadership to me spawns off discipline. Yeah. You've got to have standards and discipline on the team, and from that, your leaders are going to sprout out naturally. I can't appoint you and say, you be the leader. That's got to come from your heart.
Right.
I could say you're a team captain and I can give you that label. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a leader. That's got to come from your heart. It'll just naturally come from your personality, how you are. Do you choose to be a leader? Or are you going to be a leader? And some of the players that are not leaders that make them bad. It's just some people have that leadership skills. Some are more apt to just be a good teammate and maybe not be a leader type. Some don't say a word, but they're leaders through their actions. People they lead in different ways.
Right.
Some are vocal. Some just do it by their actions. I know on that 2016 team we had I don't know if you remember Datron Jones.
Yeah.
On the offensive and defensive line, he's a monster. But he didn't say 2 words.
Yeah.
He's a very devout Christian young man. But he led by example.
His play on the field led.
And if very much so. And we learned later on, we didn't know it. He was pretty vocal on the field. We didn't even know it.
Yeah.
But he got excited in games and become vocal. But when he come off the field, he wouldn't say 2 words. He just smiled.
Yeah.
But he was, and that's how a lot of them were. And like I said, they lead in different ways.
Yeah.
It could be vocal. It can be by example. You have some players who that's just not a strong point, but they can still be a good teammate and contribute. Everybody contributes in their own way.
That's right. That's right. Well, I love it. It's been a great conversation. To think about like the career that you've had, the lessons that you learned. Who would you say the coaches that you worked under that impacted you the most? Obviously, Coach Manus, just from a personal standpoint, there as a father figure. Where would you say you got your coaching philosophy from?
Well, basically, like I said, Coach Manus not only coached me, he basically raised me. I mean, I didn't have a father figure at home. There was a man in the house, but he wasn't a father figure. He became a father figure. And he would teach me, if I started getting a little out of line in school, I'd get called in his office,
Yeah.
And basically, he taught me about setting standards, about how to act like a man, how to, have manners, how to display yourself the way you're supposed to display yourself. And he taught me, from there, he taught me life skills, and he taught me the game of football. And I've learned, from different coaches and picked up different styles. I'm a combination of, the people that I've, just like you're probably a combination of teachers, pastors, coaches. Of things you run by. I catch myself saying things that were said to me all the time. Chuck Jordan, when I was at Conway, I was only there a year before I went to Louder, but working with him, I just remember Conway's program was run so much like Lakeview's program.
Yeah.
Chuck Jordan had high expectations.
I mean, he's a legend in South Carolina.
Yeah,
coaching.
well, and he very disciplined players, very disciplined program. You didn't say anything. You didn't, I remember we were playing a game and we were playing Myrtle Beach and we beat them, but they threw a pass. In the last play of the game, we had a guy intercept the ball, ran it for a touchdown, and he really didn't do anything that bad. He just put his hand up like that as he crossed the end zone. Well, the next week, Coach Jordan had him running, and he, because it was a classy thing. It's like we have a tradition at Lakeview that after a game, everybody puts their hands in and they say blue. Yeah. But I learned that at Lakeview, when you're on another team's field, you don't do that. Yeah. They see that as a sign of disrespect. They say we wait till we get back to our home to do that. Yeah. And we say, that's one of the traditions at Lakeview. When you're somebody else's field, you don't have a big celebration when you beat them. You save that. You don't do it in their face. Yeah. And I learned that at Lakeview that I really hadn't learned anywhere else. You save your celebration and all that because, the other team's down, they got beat, you don't rub it in their face. We'll celebrate when we get away from them, when we get back home, So you don't do a blue on their field. That's disrespectful. You get on the bus, you go back home at Lakeview and do that. Yeah. And, that's one thing about Lakeview. One thing I learned about Lakeview, the big thing about Lakeview is they believe in acting with class. Yeah. And, that's one thing that if you go in there, my first year there, Jewel McLaurin was still on the staff. And he was all about class and manners and, the way you conduct yourself, not just on the field, off the field, small things like, the way you spoke to people, just citizenship, you might call it.
Yeah.
So, I learned that from just various coaches. And like I said, it seems like every time I coach or say something, it's something that has been said or told to me at some point in time.
Well, I'll tell you, there's probably no coaches that have an original, saying or original. I mean, I think the only one that I can think of that I say that I kind of coined myself, I don't remember hearing it somewhere, is that hope is not a strategy for success. Like, you got to have a plan. You can't just hope you're going to do something. But about everything else, I've stolen from somebody, and I've probably stolen that too. I just can't remember where I stole it from.
Learning from coaches, I'll give you an example. This might have been the state championship year. We were playing Hemingway, and I remember they were doing an illegal cut on our line, and I was berated the referee a couple of times, pretty bad. I said, will you watch it? Can you not see it? Head coach Darrell King said, let me show you something. He said, Mr. Referee, I know y'all can't see anything. He said, but this is going on. The next play, the referee called it. So I said, maybe you should talk to him nice. You'll get the call instead of getting upset.
Well, you know what Mom always says? She was like, what is it? Honey attracts more, flies.
And that's true. That's true. Because that's probably one of my weaknesses. I have a tendency to get overexcited and say things I shouldn't say.
I think that's probably every coach has had that weakness at some point. You're a competitor. You're, in the heat of a moment, and I can say I've made those same mistakes. So, but this has been rich. This has been a good conversation. I'm excited. About just we don't plan. I don't plan. But we've had Jeremy Ford in here. We've had Brent Marley. These are guys. These are all people of high character that I know of. That. Corey himself as a co-host, that I know that we're going to get good quality, conversation because of the character of the people. What's interesting about that is not planning it. I don't have it scripted. I don't have a list of questions that I give these guys ahead of time. It's really just a conversation. And out of this conversation, everybody's saying the same thing. And we're talking about coaches that have been a part of winning programs, state championship programs, players that have played at a high level, either played college sports or one at big at the high school level, and so it's amazing to me how you have common, themes. It's because the reality is what it takes to be successful. Dabo says this. Dabo Swinney says this. He said, "There's no continuum for success." Meaning that every year, one of the things he talks about is you got to go back in and you reinstill the culture every single year. Mm. And you can't do that unless you live it in your life and unless it really is a value and a standard by which you lead by, you coach by, you run a program by. And I love the fact that you're seeing these common themes across the board.
Well, you can know all the X's and O's and strategies and everything you want. If you don't know how to deal with the young men and get them to respond, the key is to get them to buy. And part of the process is, while I'm coaching you, I want to make you a good person too. Yeah. Because that's going to make you a better football player. It's going to make you a better man. Yeah. And, it's like I said about Darius. I said, what impressed me about Darius is probably at one time was the best linebacker in the NFL, but was even a better man. Yeah. And coming from, starting from the great raising he had from his mom and being in that Lakeview environment, where there was discipline and you had expectations. But a coach can know all the X's and O's in the world and know all the strategies in the world. If he doesn't know how to deal with the young men and know, this guy's going to respond this way, this guy's going to respond this way, this kid needs you to get on him or he's not going to do it. This kid's not going to respond to you getting on him. Right. He's going to need you to kind of, get him by himself and talk to him. Yeah. You got to treat him a little gentler. Yeah. Everybody's individuals. If you got 40 players, you got 40 individuals. You want to make them a team, but as dealing with them, you got to learn how to deal with it. A lot of it is psychology too. Yeah, it really is. And I think that's a kind of a good place to kind of wrap up. When you said it, you've got a team, and in order for a team to be a team, you got to have standards and values that everybody, operates by. But yet at the same time, you've got a team of collective individuals that respond differently to different, coaching tactics. And to coach a player, even though the standard is the same for everybody, you have to
coach every single player from a relational standpoint differently. And I think that I know that probably if I could name one mistake that I've made in my coaching career, especially early on in my coaching career as a young coach, it was the fact that I was like, you're going to adapt to me because I'm the coach, and this is the way, this is the way we're going to run things, and this is the way it's going to be. And in some things, that's the case. Like, you're not going to be able to get out of running sprints at the end of practice, whenever we're trying to do conditioning. We're not going to change the standards for you. But at the same time, in the way that I motivate a kid, it's going to be completely different based on their personality, based on, what they're walking through at that moment and season of their life, and because we've all coached kids that are like walking through hard stuff, dealing with divorce, dealing with lost parents, death in the family, all kinds of things that could be happening, abuse at home even, where you're seeing all these different things, and you got to be able to walk that out with a kid.
Well, if you're trying to coach a kid that's come from an abusive home and you just yelling at him, that's all he's seeing is the same thing that I'm seeing. This thing I hate at home, I'm seeing from my coach.
Yeah.
You forget it. He's got to be treated in a different way.
That's right.
Now you take other kids that come from they might be a little hard-headed, and their parents might tell you, hey, you got to get on him if he's going to listen. That's the only way he's going to listen. Yeah. You got to get to know your players. Yeah. You can't just go out there on the first day of practice. During my planning period, I go help in the weight room to build that rapport with the players because, like I said, I got to earn that right. I'm going to have to get on some of them.
Yeah.
But if that's all they see from me, they're not going to take it. But if they see a lot more from me than that, then they're going to respond to it. They're going to know, hey, he's doing this for a reason. Yeah. He cares about me. He's getting on me. I did something wrong if he's getting on me. So, you go in there, you build that rapport, you get to know him. He responds this way. He responds this way. And, we're there for them. They're not there for me.
Right.
I serve them.
Yeah.
And so my job is to help make them good young men at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. Yeah. We want to win games in the process. And, it's like I told them, I said, listen, the wins and losses, you be the best person you can, and you work hard. The wins and losses, that'll all take care of itself.
That's right.
Put God first. Let's work hard. Work on being a good man. Buy into what we tell you, and the wins and losses are going to take care of themselves. Yeah. And in the process, let's make you a good man and get you ready to go over, so one day you can lead the next generation to be a good man.
That's right. I love it. And listen, I think we'll close there because I think there's no better way to end this. And I can tell you, just from watching you for the last 20 years, I don't get to be, because of my previous scheduling, coaching, and being an athletic director, I wasn't able to be at every game, but every season I would try to get away for a few games. And I have honestly, and I don't say this just because you're stepdad and because you've been so good to our family, I can honestly say that I've watched you coach with the love for your players. That's what makes the difference. I mean, to see you put your arm around a kid after a game, celebrate with them whenever they have big wins, stand with them and console after a tough loss. The times that kids have stopped by the house whenever I'm there visiting, the times whenever you go and pick a kid up and go spend time with them and just showing them that father type figure and that love. I've watched you do that for 20 years, and it's one of the things that I admire about you, and so I appreciate you taking the time to come in here today and share this with our audience.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time, guys. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of our podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this with your friends.